Okay, great. So thank you for the introductions, Baxter, and thank you all for still being attentive and still listening. This is really a great discussion in terms of the changing role of the CIO and the role of the CIO supporting transformation in the enterprise. I don't know how many of you have been following recent events, but BBVA did something very novel and very interesting recently, where they appointed their chief digital officer as their CEO, okay, which was possibly not something that most people would have thought would happen 3-4 years ago, but it has happened. And it's really with that context that we turn to this discussion today, in terms of how your roles, and they're very interesting roles, are now driving that transformation as well. So I'm going to try to pick one question with each of you to start with, and we'll probably do a few more, on your perspectives with some of these questions. So first one for you, Bruno. The role of the CIO has changed from being the master of the back office to focusing now on innovation and the customer experience. How do you see that evolving and developing in the next couple of years?
That's a good question, because what I see now as a challenge for me is to do innovation in the bank with a purpose. Don't do innovation just to innovate. Don't do innovation just hidden in the back office doing robotics and that stuff, which we are doing, but make it with a purpose for the clients. And there's a challenge there, because on one hand, myself and the team, we have to understand really what is necessary, what do clients want, how to better to serve them. So we have a big team in our innovation lab which is doing user experience to test that, to understand what they want, what they need. But also then we have to connect with business and make them buy that innovation. Because what happens is that when we go through our budgeting process and every business line have their budgets and they come out with their projects and initiatives in order to reach those budget lines. And then we come along and say, hey, you are going to do all that, why don't you try this and try that on top of what you already have to do? They don't want to do that, right? They're busy enough. Their targets are stretched enough. They have a lot of things to do. And when we come along from our innovation lab with our ideas, things which are not really proven, sometimes not tested at scale, then we have to sell it to them. So that's a challenge as well. And that's where sometimes we come along and I have to say, look, this is important, let's do it, right? Let's put this in the agenda, let's make sure that we have it done, because it's not about your budget for this year, it's about how the bank will survive in 5 years from now.
So that's a really compelling proposition, particularly the point about going to business with novel ideas and new innovation for them to consider. Anybody else on the panel would like to comment on that perspective as well in terms of the relationship with business and transformation? How do you see the role of the CIO facilitating that? Tariq?
I mean, we see it is really evolving now in the business and MBK. As you know, transferring from a CIO, keeping the lights on in the data center and making sure that, putting fires all the day, to the new roles that now MBK embracing, which is the chief digital officer in that aspect of it. And it's somebody in the middle that have his foot in the data center, yet he understands businesses. And the business is not just by listening to the business what they say. Actually, there's a transformation regarding that aspect of it in order to do this leap as BBB. So now we have a lot of books that will help us to do that. At the same time, we have academia now is involved, whether Boston University, Harvard University, Oxford University. There's a special program for CIOs to retool themselves in order to be in the business side of it. So our role is changing, and let's ask it ourselves. Yes, we've been there in the kitchen where we prepare the food. Now it's our turn to be on the table to eat that food too. But that's a transformation that had to be taken into place. Going from data center to the board tables is not an easy task. There's a lot of fighting have to be done, but this is the reality right now and where we're going to be.
What I would like to add to it is that from the role of the CIO, we were used to building systems to last. This thing has changed. Now you have to build systems which will change. They have to be, every now and then you have different changes.
Flexible and scalable.
You have to have flexibility around. And this is a cultural change that we have to bring in within our teams. How we to adapt to this particular change. That is where the role of the CIO will play a major role.
And just to add, we have talked about agile way of working, from waterfall, from early days when you look at getting requirements, as we use the example of kitchen, putting the functional specs, changing and bringing it back. Now you have to work with the business. And our experience is that do incremental changes, small changes, calibrate and go on. There are times when you have to make a full change to go in the market, but then you can do incremental changes to make it more agile. And you can course correct as very easily rather than reinvesting things.
But CIOs typically have had one of the hardest challenges in enterprises, which is they've got to manage a cost budget and support business. And apologies for business out there, business can be quite demanding. Okay, how do you balance? And this is a question for you, Sanjeev. How do you balance cost containment versus your role in driving now investments in innovation as well?
So cost is a four-letter word, and it's best if it's put in context, right? The conversation has to be about value. Now, if you look at the context, the environment, there's a number of things that we have to do today and in the future that we never had to do. If you look at compliance, if you look at risk, each of these are significant areas today that we never had these kind of challenges at the scale, 5 or 10 years ago. The crucial element is what does technology and what does investing in technology and innovation allow you to do? We talked about the changing role of CIO. There's no self-respecting banking conference that doesn't include digital. Now, all these are elements where technology and innovation has to play a role. The key inflection point is the move from inward-focusing technology, automation. How do I collate all the ledgers together and produce my financial position? To actually an outward-facing, external-facing proposition, where you actually interact with your customer. Now, you cannot do that without effective investment in technology, without all the underlying data and analytics and the process automation, and without a pretty face, which is your mobile and channels and omni-channel experience. This requires investment. And without that, I don't think you can survive as a financial institution today, or in fact, any type of institution. When the right ingredients come together in the right way at the right time, it's nothing short of magic. And the challenge for CIOs and for the businesses is to be able to keep creating that connect, keep creating that magic, and keep investing in your customer relationship. And that requires investment and that provides value. So yes, there's a cost, but I think the focus has to be on value.
So you've actually led me to my next question, which connects the customer experience and the customer relationship. Because if you look at DBS Bank, or even if you look at the example I shared this morning of T-Mobile, in both situations, the CEOs have asked their C-level executives to directly talk with customers more often. Where do you think Middle East is with that maturity or experience of engaging customers directly and allowing executives like you to own a journey directly? Where do you see that discussion in the boardroom today?
So, if you look at from a financial institution perspective, we think of customers as the retail customers, and I think at least from my experience, we are some way from enabling that kind of direct senior level connect between a C-level banking executive and individual retail customers. But if you look at it on the wholesale side or on the commercial side, we see a lot more of that. And it is certainly the case, and I'm sure my colleagues on the panel will agree, that a large part of our product innovation, at least on the wholesale side, is certainly influenced by what our marquee corporate customers would like us to do and what capabilities they want to bring to their own operations. So there's a number of examples. I mean, GCC clearing, supply chain finance. There's so many capabilities that are really inspired by genuine customer needs. Now, taking that to the retail customer is really where technology can play a role, because what you want to do is to have those, very, very segmented niche of one, segment of one level product propositions, which are enabled by technology and can still enable you to have those conversations. So I think that's the next step of maturity.
Right. Nitin, would you like to comment? So in terms of the role of CIOs helping business connect with the customer and getting involved more with customers directly, take feedback into driving innovation, how do you see the role of the CIO changing in its presence and in its determination to drive that?
See, in our bank, it's kind of unspoken, I would say, a goal to, see what you have delivered as well. So we recently taken a journey of branch transformation. Since last June, we have been refurbishing our branches. I was personally there for 2 weeks in the first 3 branches. There's a lot of things that came up in terms of efficiency, what we can do to navigate, some things. So it was a first-hand experience. I was there with some of my team members, and we actually ended up redesigning some of the things. So from a classroom situation to an actual situation, we realized that few things that are not practical. Going to corporate customers, you talked about customer of one, whatever. That also is important for us. We do go for co-pitches as well. Sometimes we are launching some new technology. There is a technology partnership there as well. So we are not reached a stage of a P&L ownership, but it is more around the supporting the business as one unit rather than just taking orders and delivering. So I've personally been in the last 2 years in the bank. I've personally been to at least 3 corporate customers, and the branches that we go to, that we have launched, I've been to.
So there's a change clearly seeping through.
Absolutely, because the feedback we get, even one customer is a happy customer that, today it's the age of social media, right? You get one poor response on Facebook, there are reactions to it. So you need to keep building this relationship one-on-one. And we had, in fact, the first day we had a serious situation where for 40 minutes we couldn't service one person. But we were at it, and she was delighted that we finished her work, and there were 3 people working on it. So that is a positive response to a very bad situation.
Let me ask the same question to Tariq from Kuwait, because we've had a UAE perspective.
Yes.
How do you see the maturity of banks in Kuwait taking on the focus on the customer and the ability to connect directly with the customer, even at a C level?
I don't think they are connected overall as a banking industry, whether in Kuwait or throughout the region. We see the reading is that there's a lot of disconnect between what customers want and what the banks is offering. Although the CIO is the number one who can offer this to the bank, to the customer, but unfortunately we don't see it. And that's why we see a huge influx of fintechs operating in this region. And the main reason that they are operating in this region because of this disconnect. Banks are not giving what the customer wants. Maybe here better, we saw earlier in the morning about Sadad and Meda, and that the bill presentment. Yes, bill presentment is one of them. If we take a look at the Kuwaiti market in regarding banking and fintechs, in 2015 there was only one fintech company in Kuwait. Today, by 2017, we have about 27 of them. We estimated the revenue on these companies in excess of 200 million. They are operating. So there is the huge financial economy that's parallel to our current financial systems. That it's been let to grow because of the ignorance of the banking industry that's not touching that. And the only person who could understand what their need is the CIO, as he's the one who's with technology. The CIO is the only person in the bank that he have a small bank within his department, within his region. He's more powerful than the CEO if we take a look at it. If a CIO, wants information regarding consumer banking, the only thing he needs to do is go to the next cubicle. One of his staff, he will have all the information that he needs, all the reporting, all what he's doing, and how the real nitty-gritty of the business is run. And he can make a decision himself. Or if you go to the board level or the CEO level, you have to go through the chain of command in order to get this information. So to be disconnected, yes, we are disconnected, and the only way to connect to it is through the CIO.
Okay, so just teeing up now, that was an external focused question. Here's an internal focused question, which I'm sure you've never experienced. At times there's a healthy tension point between what the head of innovation wants and what the CIO can at times deliver and manage, because he's got to run the bank as well. The question for you, Bruno, is you're coming from Europe, from Poland. How are you tackling that healthy tension between the head of innovation most days and his desire to produce and release product almost by the hour versus your need to keep the bank running as well and accordingly then support innovation? How is this beginning to unravel?
It's a good challenge. At Alior, we're on the other on the other side of the scale, if you want, because we have now a strategy of digital rebel where digital innovation is pushing the entire organization, and happily the CEO is very much aligning with that strategy and also helping to pushing. So it's on the other side, it's on business. They feel the pressure from our side to putting things onto them and to also keep up with the pace of change. It is a challenge, as you say, in a lot of banks. Here the challenge is on the other way. Business has to keep up with the change that we're driving, that we want to keep on driving through the bank.
Sanjay, would you like to share your thoughts on this?
Basically, yes, it is a challenge, but this is where the role of the CIO comes into picture, how he has to basically, again, if I'm going by the same question answer, that the change in the culture in his own team, he has to be brought in over there. To basically align with the new thought process over there, the new delivery that the bank and the innovation of which the different departments are asking, and take his team on this journey. Basically, you'll always have these two ways of delivery that are happening in our thing. What Gartner very famously calls bimodal.
So are you almost saying the head of innovation should have his own mobile development team?
Pardon?
Are you saying the head of innovation should have his own mobile development?
No, I'm not saying he should have his own mobile team. What I'm saying is we will have to create a team within ourselves who will be supporting that particular thing. Like I was going to say, our famous Gartner guys always say you have to have a bimodal development center over there. So you'll have to have managed these two streams in two different ways. You'll have to bring in about that cultural change within your own team to handle that.
Here's another internal question that came up when we were brainstorming. The boards in the region come from a very wide mix of very senior bankers in this region. And you see the credentials of Citigroup, Standard Chartered pretty much in a lot of places, and a lot of very prominent local Emiratis and Saudis and others in those board roles. How do you see the board looking at the role of the CIO of Nitin? When the board looks at the role of the CIO today, what do they look to the CIO as being accountable for in driving that transformation?
See, I would like to categorize this for three things. One role is keeping the lights on. Nobody talks about it. It's not a chatter that you would see in the corridors, but it is a necessary thing. There's a budget allocated to it. 10 years back, it used to be about 60-65% of running the bank. Now it's probably the reverse. But that is necessary, and people realize that keeping lights on and keeping business as usual is important for the customer's trust in us. And that has an investment. The second thing is around being compliant as well. So that's the cost of doing business. So we don't keep on, for us it is about making sure that from information security perspective, which is technology related, or other investments, we bring things out to the table to say this is what we could look at. Third is the new technologies that keep coming, and we have not touched much upon blockchain of the conversations here, but that's going to be a mandate in 2020 here, right? So API banking is coming in. So I think there is the role of a CIO is to make sure that business gets the return on investment. We have to showcase that, we have to communicate, but we also need to make sure that we communicate effectively what does a technology unit need to support the business as well, keeping the lights on, the hygiene and all that. I think we don't do a great job of that as a community, right? So that's changing through when we're working together. We talked about this, this kitchen to living room experience. That's changing, but that needs to be more effective in my view. There has to be empathy coming out, and we have to make sure that's there.
Okay. Before I get in time reminders from Baxter in a minute, I want to ask Sanjeev the same question, because you're living evidence of the role of how the CIO can support a transformation. You've taken two fairly significant banks and had a very busy time in the last 12 months putting those two pieces of the jigsaw together. If the board was looking at you today and in the audience, what would they be saying, we want to see the CIO drive for us?
So I think it's a hierarchy of expectations. At the base, you need to have, a robust operational setup, keeping the lights on, making sure you're secure, compliant, and all of those process models in place. So I think that's That's a base expectation that has not changed. In fact, it has become even more critical, in the age of the always on and always connected bank. Building on top of that, you need to have robust data and insights. So, for example, are you able to generate things like product level profitability, every day? Can you advise your business segment owners how they're doing every day? It's that kind of stuff that is pretty valued, critical, and unfortunately not all that common. And of course, then there is the customer enabling. How are you perceived by your customers? Are your products and services delivered in a way that resonates? In this age of social media. Also, we live in a world where customers experience products and services, non-banking products and services, in very different ways today. What you have to do is to make sure that you're still relevant to them. You're still keeping pace with them. What they cannot be is having, a Facebook stream which is so personalized, and then going to a bank where, they don't know you at all. So, what we have to do is to ensure that that relevance continues, and that you are able to, live, survive, and even thrive in this kind of context. So it's all of those, but it absolutely begins with a robust operational setup and has to build up from there. What you cannot do is to say that I'm very innovative, but I have security breaches every other day, and my applications are not available. So it has to be that hierarchy.
Okay, so I'm going to start with you then the next question based on what you just said. And this question can only have a one-word answer. The word can have two components if you like. Those are the rules. What do you see as being the biggest disruption to banking in this region in the next 3 years?
Payments.
Payments. You've coached everyone. Tariq.
Fintech.
Fintechs. Sanjay.
I will go for both.
You'd go for both. Smart man. Okay. Nitin?
The payments are definitely one, but if I have to pick up, I would say, integration.
Integration.
Yeah.
Payments, fintechs, payment and integration, and yourself, Bruno?
I would say the change. Right?
Change.
Today might be payments, tomorrow might be blockchain, but it's the changing. That everything is happening. One day is one thing, the next day there's a new topic, something is wrapping again.
I'm so glad you didn't say too many consultants with too many boring slides, so that's encouraging. Okay, a question with you, Bruno, again. How do you see, because you've got maybe some time ahead of us in Europe, but then again, there's a lot of things that are very progressive here in our markets here in the Middle East. How do you see the role of the CIO evolving in Europe right now? So we've seen BBVA make a very strong statement with how they perceive the value of the chief digital officer. How do you see the role of the CIO currently evolving in Europe?
I think the CIO will have a saying more and more in the capital strategy of the bank. It used to be the innovator, the chief innovator officer, and driving innovation, driving the projects to come up with a new mobile app, a new feature, and so on. And it's more and more having a say in, shall we buy this fintech? Shall we go into this new business that involves this investment? And that's where I see the change, right? The
so
CIO,
partnership focus as well,
exactly,
on driving the ecosystem discussion.
Exactly.
Okay, good. Nitin, same question to you. How do you see the role of the CIO evolving in the region?
See, I would say, while being a change agent, there has to be accountability. And for that, either you're a P&L owner. For a bank, in banking, a CEO may be a stretch, but other industries, I think CIOs could be their CEOs as well.
Okay. So, Sanjay.
Basically, in my opinion, the role of the CIO will change from being a guy who was providing lights on, keeping your lights on, to an equal partner on your table, discussing the strategy of the business, giving you the valuable inputs from the technology point of view. That will be the role of the CIO going forward. It's not going to be just keeping your lights on and developing system as per the requirement.
Okay, Sanjeev, thank you.
I think the way a CIO will be judged by the board or by the executive management is whether he or she is able to deliver and maintain a fit-for-purpose architecture. And when I say fit for purpose, given all these new challenges that are coming about with the bank. So an architecture that allows you to set up and tear down relationships very fast, an architecture that allows you to create an omnichannel and evolve that omnichannel experience very fast, an architecture that allows you to have the bimodal IT model, which I think is is really a different way of thinking about it. All of this, has to be underpinned by an architecture that allows you to be able to do all these things. And I think that's really how a CIO will be measured.
Good, thank you. Tariq.
From our HR perspective, there will always be a box called CIO. This is the guy who's going to keep the lights on, keep taking care of the system and making sure everything's up. But as this person, how well he's going to evolve, what used to be, CIO stands for career ending, where today is, just the beginning for the career. Eventually, it's going to be reaching to the CEO level, as we're going to see it in this region, and it's really going to be fast. We've been seeing central bank requirement changing to the rolling to the roles of the CIOs and what their background is, and things are revolving very fast. We see it in the region. But CIO, there will always be a box that you have to spend time in it in order to move forward.
Thank you for that. So I think we've run out of the questions for the panel from the stage. I think we'd like to open up to the audience to raise their hands, as they have there, and ask the panel questions.
So, ladies and gentlemen, this is where you get your voice. So if we can have your name, your company, and your one question. There are roaming microphones throughout the room. Please raise your hand. Let us know who's going to be our second speaker.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. My name is Talat Hafid. I'm the Secretary General of the Saudi Banks Media and Awareness, and also the spokesman of Saudi Banks. Thank you for this excellent forum. Thank you for the lead sponsor, MEDA. Excellent presentation so far, but I think the presentation did not address the regulation of central banks around all of this technology, approve it or disapprove it or whatever. Simply also in some countries, the court system probably will not allow what's being called paperless communication or technology, whatever, deploying technology. One thing also that's missing, in my humble opinion, is the awareness of our customers, because at the end of the day, we're going to bombard our customer with this technology, sophisticated technology, especially in a generation like myself. Probably the youngster will deal with it, but again, I think with our customers, we should really focus. I did not hear any of programs of awareness and education to our customers. Thank you very much.
Okay, does anybody want to comment on
No,
that?
I would like just to light the shade on the regulatory body, like central banks, because in some banks, you're probably aware, especially in the Middle East, with others, they don't allow electronic accounts. They don't allow what we call non-resident accounts. And this is part of the technology, how we could convince central banks of the change. The court system should be also aligned with the technology, because some of the court system in the Middle East, they still require documentation and papers and all of that. And finally, what we're going to do about the education and awareness to our clients, across the globe.
So can I just ask that question? So just dealing with the regulation point for a second, right? So we all know that we work in markets where regulation matters, okay? The point was that we hadn't mentioned it enough, but coming to the governance point in how do we build more governance around our interaction with customers? I don't know, Nitin, if you want to go with that first.
So let me, I think it's a very insightful question. We all deal with it every day. The one part of the question I would address it by saying that it's all about, we have technology today to do straight-through processing. We actually can. We can totally digitize. But then when the regulations come in, you need, for example, wet signature to open an account. So what we have done in the bank is we have done an entire mapping of the process and see where we don't need manual intervention to digitize till the end, and then take the wet signature. So what that helps us is in the overall processing, it helps us, data capture, data accuracy, everything, till the last when you have to get the signature. So and we are looking for approvals from the central bank to see, at least for certain risk categories, we are able to pass through. And same thing goes for payments processing. There is a whitelisting that we look at. sort of approved list of customers where we don't have to do additional screening. So there are ways around. Technology is available. We are actively working with the banks to see how we can basically identify the good or safe transactions of customers and then do straight through processing. It is a challenge, as we all know, but it is a necessary thing and has to have the awareness. Customers also, to the other point, I can probably touch upon that as well. How does it impact the customers? It impacts the customer from the turnaround time basis. So if I have to send say a dollar payment into some other country from here, there is a screening process for it. Now, as we engage with the customers, if an individual customer versus a corporate customer, are different ways of engagement. But as you make them aware of things, I think there is better appreciation from the customers as well.
Okay, thank you. So thank you for that. Can we have another question?
Hi, my name is Bimaljit. I'm from Manipal Global Education. There was this question about balance between cost and investment. I want to ask a similar question about balance between cost and revenue generation. And I ask it from a perspective that, the impression that, that comes across that all of this drive towards digitization, the large driver seems to be cost optimization. While at a cursory level, many people will say it is both, but I would want to hear what is panel's view on the balance between cost and revenue generation.
Sanjeev, you might want to. Sorry, substitute between you and Tariq.
Go ahead.
Sorry. So digitization, I think, affects both cost and revenue generation. So, in any digital, study or any business case, there is an element of cost reduction, but I think the bigger leverage is the potential of revenue generation. Now, you need to certainly invest, so there is that element, but overall you'll find that a good digital strategy will help you reduce your costs as well as increase your revenue. So I don't think there's a balance. I think it's both. So it helps you manage costs and gets you revenue.
Tariq, you want to add? Sorry.
Basically, it is also you have to manage a balance between the approach that you're taking. You have to basically come up with a process where you learn to fail fast. So you come out with a business requirement, you test it out in the market, and if it doesn't work, move back fast rather than continuing more investment in it. That's an approach that we'll have to take.
Tariq, finally.
I mean, every project I worked on in digitalization, we always find out there is two things happening in it. Productivity goes up by 99%, and time to production or time to market is really, about 90%. Also on that aspect of it, when we took our personal loan and we shrank the approval from 3 days to 90 seconds, I mean, that was a huge improvement. We can maintain the headcounts, that we didn't have to add more employees due to the growth in the population. We didn't have to open more branches, although we are opening them, but we didn't have to, as it used to be. The back office operation no longer exists. Now the back office operation is in the front office in order to process this loan, because it now takes 90 seconds instead of the 3 days. So every digitalization project that we've been into, it's in less than 100% of appreciation and value to add it to the bank more than anything else.
Okay, good, thank you.
So Naveed, we have time for one, possibly two, depending on how long it takes to reply. Your name, your company, and your question, please, sir.
Hi, I'm Mehul from HSBC. I have a question regarding social media related information which is available. So how banks are using the social information available on social media about their customer to cross-sell different product. I know that we in the bank talk lot about the information sharing, the social media information available, or we are making our information available to the customer. So from a consultancy perspective, how are the consultants helping the banks to use the social media information to cross-sell product, and how the banks are using the social media on their own, information of the social media on their own to cross-sell products?
So cross-sell, upsell, social media, how do we leverage it?
Maybe I can start. It's a challenge, and we are starting to use social media in several ways. We have our own social media platform where we engage with customers, and they can change information between themselves and do peer-to-peer payments and so on. And that is already working, and that's for retail. And we are starting now also to get information from social media and include that in our models, in our risk models, and are also on our models to sell the next product to the client. So that is something, it's a process that it's starting now. But then we are also leveraging social media to interact with our employees, to engage them. We are now going to have a town hall meeting next month where we're going to have around 700 people from the bank. And even though we call ourselves innovative, but the true fact is that most of our employees, they still use a dumb phone, right, to call clients and so on. So we're going to have all those 700 managers get smartphones already installed with LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, bank applications and so on. And we're going to start to engage with our sales force, with our managers, using social media, leveraging social media as well. So we can do it in several ways. We can leverage social media for several ways.
So Sanjeev, the mantra is grow stronger together.
Grow stronger. So I think so certainly what we do is the bank itself is on all your social media channels. So we use that as a communication medium. We also use it as a support medium. So for example, if there's, apart from calling the call center, you can also reach us and bank at any of our social media channels, and there is a team that will, kind of respond to your request. So that's one way that we do it. We also use it for, as a sales channel. So you could express interest in any product or service through the social media. We try to incorporate in a very non-invasive way some of the social media data of our customers, in things like our risk model. So for example, we have a propensity model that tells us what customers are likely to become delinquent or non-performing and so on. So we try to build some of that data into the model. What we haven't yet done, and certainly there's a right way and wrong way of doing it, is to take the social media data that customers generate, about a trip that they're planning or an event in their life, and be able to offer them a product or a service that we believe is tailored to them. So there's a right way of doing it, there's a wrong way of doing it. Until we're sure which, what's the best way, that's not something that we have done yet. But we do use it in the ways that I described earlier.
Do you want to comment, Nitin?
Yeah, I think just to add, it's all about customer insight. When you see the touch points for a customer coming into your social media, sites, when a customer comes in, we can reach out. If there's a customer complaint on either Twitter or Facebook, one reaches out and tries to address and also cross-sell. So we do that inside. And also we have in this new refurbished branches, in our tablet, we can see when a customer has actually visited our sites like Facebook or commented on Twitter as well, and then you can cross-sell or service better. So we are using it not just in sales piece, but also good service, and retention is very important for us as well. So it works both ways.
So that was a great question, so thank you for asking that. I don't know how we are on time.
Naveed, we've got time for one final question in the latter 4 minutes.
I'm Najwa from Samba Financial Group Dubai. Going back to the question, regulation, what Mr. Tariq mentioned, don't you think we should start like with regulatory requirements initially? Like for example, it's very good to have innovative products, but when it comes maybe to regulation, it's going to be showstopper. For example, if I take it from customer point of view, it's very good to have, for example, to open an account for 30 seconds, but is the customer actually like protected? When I have to, for example, I don't think any customer can read terms and conditions of the bank within 30 seconds and then sign. So I don't consider this as an achievement. Plus, I think everything should start maybe with regulatory requirements first and then take it, like especially to do with cost and things like that. What are your views on this?
So, Tariq, go on.
Yeah, sure. I mean, surprisingly, all government in the GCC is outpacing any regulatory body, whether any central banks or us as a banking. As every country in the region now have the Digital Act. I'm very familiar with Kuwait Digital Act, which is of 2014, and I know it's based on the Saudi Arabia Digital Act. In all of these digital acts, there is control about virtual identity. And in there, whereas the electronic signature have the equivalent weight of a written signature in front of a court. But none of our regulatory, none of the central bank here in the region adopted that. And none of the banks that went and approached one of the central banks and said, you know what, I know law exists, I would like to activate it. I know in Kuwait with MBK, we're trying to do that. And we are approaching the regulatory and said, you know what, in 2014, there is a law that will allow us. And some of the other stuff, I mean, there's two main things about these laws. Cross up the GCC. One, the virtual identity with the equivalent of the signatures, and the other one, the contract between two systems, or between system and individual. These exist in the book today. And I never saw, throughout the history, there is a law that's outpacing technology, but we have it here in the region.
Thank you. Thank you for asking the question as well. One more? Okay.
Hi. I'm Ali with Red Hat. So my question is, how do you see the role of open source, open standard play in technology-based business transformation?
Oh, that's a good one. How do you see the role of open source and open standard? Who wants to go first on that? Sanjeev?
So, open source has, really enabled us to do a lot more things than we could not have thought possible. So, the ability for us to experiment, to launch, initiatives, I think has been greatly helped by the availability of robust and mature open source technologies. If you look at our data center, for example, Linux is everywhere, and that's a great thing because we get all the performance and other benefits associated. But I think it goes beyond that. So, data and analytics, I think a lot of people have spoken about the role that they play in the digital future. Now, some of the best sort of technologies for doing analytics are open source. Now, it's a mix, it's a balance between having, the right level of open source technologies and supportability and compliance requirements. But if institutions are able to strike that balance, I think the opportunities simply multiply to a level that wouldn't have been otherwise possible. So I think it's a great liberating force, and all of us need to take advantage of it.
Thank you.
I'll say, as CIOs, we love open source because it ties back to the earlier question on cost optimization. Open source is one of the things which helps us do that cost optimization to a big extent.
And I know Sanjeev is a big fan of open source. Tariq, would you like to comment on the...
Yeah, I mean, going to the future forward on regarding open source, it's the driving force. If we see all the technology that we use in the bank today, whether databases, data relation databases, coming from the security and intelligence agency. But today we have an open source built from the ground up regarding banking and financial transaction, like blockchain. It's coming from Bitcoin that they found it there. Security built into it, distributed system as we need it. So going forward, yes, open source will be the way to go for banking industry to reduce costs, increase security, and all of the other features regarding it.
Okay. I hope we answered the question. That's it. Okay. Thank you.
So, ladies and gentlemen, a warm thank you to Naveed Minnis, IBM. Thank you for hosting.